All right, so we're at part two, and I'm titling this one How I Got My Shit Together and Manifested My Dream Guy. So, you remember from the first video, I was talking about this really unhealthy relationship I'd had, and I had to break the cycle for myself. And so I realized coming out of therapy that I didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like. And so, like, I was literally Googling like relationship red flags and like, what does emotional intimacy look like? And, what should I be looking for? Because one of the conversations I had with my therapist that really stuck with me, she said, you're very codependent. And when you meet someone who's healthy and not codependent, it's going to seem boring. And I want you just to be prepared for that. And I was like, okay. Because she's like, you're not going to have these wild ups and downs in your relationship. Like, it's going to be a steady thing that you can count on. But you're not going to get that emotional high when, you've gone from really bad to really good. So you gotta prepare yourself for that. It's like, okay. And so I spent several years, I was actually just looking at an old journal from that time. She had encouraged me to keep a journal, and I was looking through it, and there was a part in it where I said, I'm making the right decision breaking up with him. But we've been together for so long. I'm terrified of being lonely. And I read that and I was like, wow, because those years after I broke up with him were some of the best and most fulfilling I've ever had in my life, because I allowed myself to change. I put myself out there. I made really good friends, which was something that I had a hard time doing when we were dating, because he was very insecure and kind of, I guess, jealous of those relationships and knew that he didn't treat me well. And so he was really, I think, afraid of somebody finding out how he treated me. And so the closer I would get to a female friend, the more he would hate her, or, say things about her and bring her down, because he was afraid that she was going to take me away. And I say that because I've talked to a lot of other women who have been in similar situations. So I allowed myself to reach out and, make these really close friendships with these women I'm still friends with, deep in relationships that I had before, really took time to mature and grow into what I knew I could be. And there's this one thing from the book Atomic Habits, which is an amazing book. One of the things that they talk about in the book is when you want to change a habit and be a different person, like, we kind of have this idea in our head of like, oh, well, when this benchmark is met, then I can be different. But what it really comes down to is saying, I want to be different. I want to do things differently. How does that person act, and start acting that way? And that's what I was doing. I built confidence for myself. I created those boundaries. I figured out what intimacy was in friendships, and kind of unknowingly set myself up to meet my partner. But the thing is when I met him, I really wasn't looking. And so the night that he messaged me on a dating site, I had just gotten back from Ecuador with my dad. My dad was going to retire to Ecuador, and came back and I was like, I think I want to live there. That was really amazing. Like, I think that's what I want. And I come home, open up my messages. I haven't been online in 2 weeks, and there's a message from this guy, and he's like, hey, I am hosting a nonprofit fundraiser. I do karaoke. You should come down and check it out. And I was like, well, he seems nice. And I didn't go that night, and I'm glad I didn't, because the ex-boyfriend was tending bar, which I did not know. Really glad I didn't go that night. But I was like, he seems nice enough. He seems like somebody I could be friends with, because he also had some health problems at the time. He was recently divorced, and I was like, he is not the guy I'm looking for. So we meet for a beer. He tries to buy me one. I'm like, nope, I am paying for mine. So I was like, I want to be able to leave. And I also don't think I owe him something, because he bought me a beer. And we sat there for hours talking. I asked him some really hard questions, almost made him cry, because I was asking about, what he had been through with his health issues and his divorce, and realized he was a really awesome dude. And so we went on a second date, and in that second date I had butterflies. And like, then I started Googling. I started looking on Etsy at wedding invitations, and I was like, this is insane. What am I doing? This is what my therapist told me not to do. But he checked all the boxes, and by the boxes, I mean that in the between time from him and the ex, I sat down with a friend one night, and she was like, you were freaking awesome. Like, what are you doing? Like, you of all people should be like the most amazing dude ever. And she's like, I don't know what your problem is, but like, we need to fix it. And she actually sat down with a whiteboard. There was fire, wine. We sat down with a whiteboard, and she's like, we're going to make a list of the expectations that you have. Like, what are your requirements for a guy? And I wrote it down in my journal, and I kind of forgot about it. And my husband came along, and I was like, oh yeah, I have that list. And I went back and looked at it. We'd been together for a few months, and lo and behold, he fit everything on that list. He checked every single box on that list. And I will share that in the description for this video so you can see what that was. And so, you know, throughout this whole process, it was like, he seems amazing. Is he? And I shopped him around to everybody, like all of my friends. It was like, you have to meet him, because obviously, like, I make terrible decisions. So what am I missing? And everybody was like, no, he's awesome, and you should marry him. And so, you know, to bring that back to the Clarity Catalyst work, again, it's that creative thinking of, you know, I had this way that I did things, and I knew I needed to do them differently. And so how could I do that? Like, how could I show up differently for myself and for the people around me to, you know, find a healthy relationship with a partner, to, you know, grow those relationships with my family where I felt like I was still being treated by a child, or like a child. And you know what, in my jobs too, like, I didn't feel appreciated. It was like, I need to find something else that that is a good fit for me. And you know, all of that work that I'd done initially, just, you know, being like, I need to break up with this guy, but I got to break this cycle, led to so much else. It led me honestly to sitting here recording this video. And it was letting me tap into my intuition. Like, I'm a very intuitive person, but I had spent so much of my life ignoring that gut on so many things. And I got to a point where I didn't trust myself, and I didn't know what was real and wasn't. You know, after being in a relationship with somebody who gaslit me for 10 years, I mean, it was even worse. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to make decisions. I didn't know what a right decision was. But when I was able to start tapping into my own intuition and trusting myself, is when things really started to change. And again, that negative self-talk I was talking about in video 1, you know, that doesn't go away immediately. And we're always all going to have those little voices in our heads, but knowing when to recognize them and how to talk to them and say, you are wrong. I know you're trying to protect me, but you're wrong. And, you know, in meeting my husband, there were some voices in there that was like, you don't deserve this. Like, he's too good for you. And really convincing myself and fully understanding that, like, no, I deserve him, because he does love me, and I love him, and we're a good fit for each other. And I think before, I would have met him and just completely self-sabotaged, because I didn't think I deserved him. He seemed boring because he wasn't, you know, it wasn't a codependent relationship. You know, that he was just basically too good for me. And I want to end this one with the message that, you know, like I said in the last video, like, I was a common denominator in my problems. Like, we are all the common denominator in our problems, but we also, the good news about that, the good part of it, is that you hold the power to change. Like, if you're the common denominator, that means that it revolves around you, and you get to be in charge. And I want to leave you with that in this video. And then I want you to come join me in the next video, where I'm going to tell you how I accidentally asked my husband to marry me after we'd been dating for about 3 weeks, and he said yes. So join me in the next video.